Hi, my name is Chris Harper. I'm a pastor at Bethel Community Church in Edmonton, Alberta, and I am here with a recent missions team that went to El Salvador and Nicaragua. Normally, we would actually be having this conversation on Sunday morning. The team would have come back and been able to present this really exciting experience of the things that they participated in and the ministries that they joined. But in light of COVID-19, we didn't get to have this conversation. And so in talking and debriefing how we could tell the story of this trip that they were on, we thought that we could do a Zoom call. And so I have here is Lynn DeRosier, Marcy Mast, Kayla Mast, and Carson Vischer. And just for the next little bit of time, we are going to have a conversation about their trip. And one of the sort of insights and context for this for me personally is I just moved to Canada to serve at the church. I did not meet most of these people before they left and was kind of thinking about them the whole time that they were there, which is why I had this on my desk the whole time. Just kind of thinking about what they were doing, but at the same time, not really understanding everything. But so I'm excited to get to know this team a little more and to hear about what they were doing. So for the first thing, I think, we were talking before about how to talk about the trip. And I think Lynn was going to start us off by giving us some background about everything that went into this trip. So take it away, Lynn.
All right. So the background in this trip is that when we planted Bridge Church, then we ended up with a new team sitting at the World Missions table. So we decided that some of our team members really needed to try and discover what it is that we supported, who we supported, and where we supported. So that was the impetus just for the trip. It morphed somewhat, and that's good. That's always good. We started going to Nicaragua in 2000, and we went regularly every year for 10 years. And we were able to develop relationships there, but then we had some changes at church in 2010, and we had not visited as a mission trip for relationship building since. And so, but we still continue to provide financial support for them. So with this new team, we decided, well, since we're still supporting Nicaragua, we really should go there and visit and see what it is, which projects we're supporting. So that was part of that. Yeah. So we did that on this trip. We were gone for 10 days, and it was quite a whirlwind trip. A lot of learning, a lot of sitting down and having to learn, the historical concepts of both countries in the programs that were offered by the organizations we connected with, that we work with when we are in those countries. So we were gone for 10 days, March 3rd to March 13th, and 5 days in each country. While we were there, one of the main purposes in Nicaragua was really to find out about their church friendship program. And so we did a lot of sitting down and learning about that, but we met with 3 different pastoral teams that are in a church friendship program with American churches. And just we wanted to explore that and to see how that would work for us. And Lynn, that's about it.
You had visited before, is that right?
I have visited several times in Nicaragua and several times in El Salvador, both. Yes, I love Latino countries. Yes,
that's great. Thanks for starting us off. I think one of the things I wanted to know was, what was a highlight for you guys in the trip? I think we were talking about a bunch of things before the call, but could one of you share a highlight of what this trip was like for you?
Yeah, so we got to meet with a handful of different people. The first we met with was in Nicaragua, and he's from Canada, and he was actually the only one we met that was from North America. And so we got to learn lots about his experience and how he fell into the program and found it. And he, I think, was halfway through, and we got to hear everything from when he started till where he is now. And it was just super cool to hear, just about his time and what he had all learned. And we got to also sit with a few in El Salvador who were local. So it's quite a different experience because they don't have to learn a new language. And the culture is just very similar. So there's a lot less of just a change there, I guess.
Yeah. How reliant were you as a team on just translators and people helping you communicate? Is that a big thing? It's been a big thing for me when I've gone overseas on trips.
Mm-hmm. We depended on Adriana a lot, and Raul. And Lynn, probably more than Raul, I should say, but maybe you can edit that out. And then we basically all need help except for Lynn. So, we were all pretty fortunate. We always had help, and we were never really stuck. So,
what I'm hearing is that Lynn is champion speaking Spanish of the group.
Mm-hmm.
Lynn was humbled.
Humble. Well, hey, humbled also sometimes gets it done. I mean,
You want to hear about how Lynn was humbled? Lynn was so darn proud of having taken Spanish courses and busted her buns learning the language, and I felt really good about it. And
Carson, you were talking about this cohort program. I'm just wondering, what about that really stood out to you? Is it just really neat to just kind of connect with local people in the countries?
I don't know if it's what is important to me about it. I think it's what we were able to hear from the cohorts, and just the trust that they have in God and the plan He has for their lives, and that they were able to just give up a year and go live in a totally different place, and just having that faith and to just drop everything and leave and to follow God and just learn about His His teachings. And it's a lot of self growth. A big thing is you learn about yourself and about your faith, and so I think that's really cool. It's just you're serving. You get to serve the community and the host organization, but you also grow as a person. So just really cool.
That's great.
I think I should explain what the cohort program is, Chris. So the cohort program is for young adults, 18 to 30, whatever, and they can take a year of their lives and commit a year to either working in El Salvador, Nicaragua, or Costa Rica, and Guatemala, and they might, so like Adrian, the one cohort we met he's from Ontario, and he was there in September for 2 months learning Spanish, and then he went home for Christmas and came back in January, and he's in Nicaragua for a year, and he's working there he's a psychology major, so he's working in the healing circles, which helps people with abuse and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, every cohort would have a different specialty depending where your gifts lie. And most times you're paired up with another cohort from Central America. In Nicaragua this year, he did not have a cohort from Central America with him. He was by himself, but that's what the cohort program is. And we would love to see some young adults from Bethel signing up for it eventually, but
That's great. No, that's helpful. I was kind of picking that up a little bit, but I needed a little bit more information. Yeah.
They always fill in my blanks. I always appreciate that.
You guys are so much more familiar with it than I, so it's fine. Kayla, what was a highlight for you for the trip?
Well, one of the cool things was in El Salvador, we went with Josue and Denise, who were previous cohorts, but then Seeds of New Creation hired them, or Clavis hired them.
Yeah.
So they work for Clavis, which is an organization that goes into schools and helps children deal with abuse and to break the cycle of abuse. So we sat in on a exercise that they were doing with the kids, having them like make better decisions, and they had like a bunch of decisions, and you had certain number of points, and you had to pick different things, and they each cost different amount of points or whatever. Some of it was lost in translation, but
But life's like life skills, like how to make decisions in life. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like the end of it, they had to write down a bad decision on paper, and it's anywhere from like I stole money from my parents to I hit my grandmother and stuff like this. So they're just trying to end that cycle of abuse, which is really cool. And they start like at the source with the children in the school. So
that sounds like really good, but it also sounds really just kind of heavy when you think about the level of abuse going on and what actually becomes kind of normal for many people.
Yeah, it's definitely unfortunate what's happening in a lot of places like that. But I think Clavis is really making a difference in those kids' lives, and it definitely helped having us there, I think, because we each had to like share an experience from our past, and the kids
just bad decision, right?
Yeah, and the kids just loved us. Like I was standing in like the middle, and it was a sea of little heads everywhere, and they're trying to practice their English, and I have no idea what they're saying half the time, and they don't know what I'm saying, but like they're just so happy to see you.
That's so great. Thanks for sharing that. We were talking beforehand about something called a prayer room. Is that anything you had to do with just on the trip?
Yeah, so a few days before the trip, Lynn got an email and they had asked her to come and paint the prayer room. So they had this office that they had meant to rent out, but then...
And where is this, by the way? I just wanted to...
Sorry. This is back at the Nehemiah Center in Nicaragua.
Okay, so this is kind of where you guys started off, and then the Nehemiah Center was a place you spent some time in. Gotcha.
Yeah, so Nehemiah Center, they have like a bunch of different organizations that have different little office spaces within the Nehemiah Center. So this room was at first going to be for one of those organizations, but then they never came. So they decided to convert it into a prayer room. So we like washed all the walls, and I kind of used my artistic talents, and I painted like a big mural on the one wall with like a dove, and Lynn came up with the idea to do like different names of God and like different Bible verses in Spanish on the walls. So we went through and painted all that on there, and Carson made a bench, and we had some cushions that we brought along and to make like a nice little bench. So yeah.
That's really neat. Thanks for sharing that, guys. One of the things we were talking about beforehand was about, what does the future of missions look like as we're kind of just talking and learning more about Nicaragua and El Salvador? What are things that are going on just in the years ahead in both these places that you visited?
Maybe we could start with Home of Blessings first, though, Marcy.
Okay.
And then go on, and then move on to yours. Yeah.
Why don't you guys talk about Home of Blessings? You've been there more than I have, so.
Carson?
Yeah, Carson, you've been at Home Blessings a bunch, is what I was hearing.
Mm-hmm.
What is Home of Blessings?
Yeah, so Home of Blessings is a project that was started. It started in a dirt field in 2015, and it was just an idea that was had. And
what country is this in?
This is in El Salvador. Yeah.
El Salvador. Okay.
Yeah. And so the idea is that it would be a center for pastors and pastors' families, and a learning center, but also somewhat of a retreat center, so that the pastors could come there for a few days to re-energize and rejuvenate, and just remember what they're being called to do, because lots of the pastors in El Salvador, lots of them just start out taking their Bible to church every week, and they just kind of get handpicked and told that, okay, you're going to be the pastor now. So they don't have a lot of formal training, and so this is an opportunity for them to have a bit of that, but also just a bit of a vacation of sorts. It's on a mountainside, and it's beautiful and lush, And so it's just a really great place for pastors to go with their families.
That's really neat. So
It's an off-grid. They're looking to build it off-grid.
Yeah.
It is land that was gifted to Seeds of New Creation through Roland Vanderberg's family. Roland is one of our missionaries, and he often comes to Bethel to talk. He lives in Calgary. And so the land itself is self-sufficient in that they have solar panels to bring power in, but they also have beehives, and they have chicken coops. They're looking to really, they have planted many fruit trees. So Kayla picked some mandarins off one of the trees this last trip. They have banana trees. They have mangoes. I'm sure there's a whole bunch that I could keep going or whatever. They're hoping to become self-sufficient and off-grid.
Wow.
So that's what Carson's been building on every time he goes.
So not a dirt field anymore.
No, not a dirt field.
That's great. So would this would it now like be able to host like a couple families now, or I'm just trying to get a perspective.
Yeah, so it's not quite ready for that, just because you don't really want to have it doesn't have a kitchen or water or anything like that yet, but I think they won't open it to anybody until it's all completely finished.
Okay, this is we're still working on this, but it's just come a long way.
Yeah, no, it has come a long way. Even since 2 years ago when I was there, it was just the walls were only 4 foot high all around, so you could see the layout of everything, all the rooms and doors, but there was a shortage of bricks in the country, so there was a big delay. But yeah, just we see photos once in a while, but they just don't do it the same. So when we went there this past trip, the walls are up, the roof is on, the doors and windows are in, and it's just phenomenal. And it's nothing like I thought, anyways. I didn't know, so it's just a wonderful, wonderful building.
And you asked about the future. So the reason I wanted to talk about Home of Blessings here is because when we went in 2015, we engaged and committed to a certain financial amount from Bethel yearly, or a total amount or whatever, towards Home of Blessings. So sometimes we have a collection strictly for Home of Blessings, and to give towards that commitment. So that's for future, that one. There's more that Marcy will talk about, but that's one for Home of Blessings.
Gotcha.
That maybe even Marcy can speak to.
Yeah. Well, with the future, Marcy, is anything more you want to say, or just things that maybe be good to mention about the trip?
Well, I think probably like with the trip, one of the main purposes of our trip was investigating the church friendship program and seeing if we could start something like that up in El Salvador, because they have nothing like that in El Salvador. Seeds of New Creation is relatively new compared to Nehemiah Center in Nicaragua. So in Nicaragua, Adriana, she is the person who kind of heads up the church friendship program, and her husband Raul told us the history of it. We met a lot of churches that Lynn had talked about already that are in the church friendship program, and the benefit it is to them. It's not a financial supporting thing. It's more of a encouragement and supporting and a relationship building. And so we were getting background on it in Nicaragua to see if we can bring this to El Salvador. So Adriana and Raul came with us to El Salvador, and we met with the board of Seeds of New Creation. And then, so the board there is on board with us trying to start the program there. We're not sure how it will look. The church culture in El Salvador is quite a bit different than the church culture in Nicaragua. And El Salvador doesn't have Adriana to spearhead all this stuff like Nicaragua does. So then as soon as we got back, of course, we've all been in lockdown, so we haven't had a chance to talk about it with Steve Holtrup, who's the director of Resonate in Central America. So we're not quite sure how the church friendship program is going to move forward from this, But Steve and Adriana both heavily hinted at us to spend more of our energies in El Salvador than Nicaragua. Not our money, like we'll keep our financial support the way we're going, but Nicaragua has lots of churches already partnering with them, and El Salvador has very few. We are the only team that actually comes to Seeds of New Creation. So they would love to see us spend more of our energies in El Salvador. So from going forward, we probably won't go back to Nicaragua near as often as we will go to El Salvador. We'll spend more of our time in El Salvador building relationships with churches in there. Like we've had a relationship in St. Martin and with some other pastors there that we will try build more relationships with them there to see if we can foster a friendship program in El Salvador.
Yeah, that's just really great context. I love hearing the relationship building things. Like this is just something, it's always about long term, how to join with these different churches and different communities, and just to be like friends, brothers and sister churches. That kind of a thing is a really good way to relate to people in different countries.
So that's kind of where we're hoping to go. Like I said, Carson hasn't had a chance to talk with Steve since we got back to see what all came out after we left. But anyways, hopefully eventually we will catch up with him.
Since you kind of mentioned it, might be worth asking, one of the things that happened, in the world was, that COVID-19 really became a much more serious thing, specifically in North America, while you guys were in Nicaragua and El Salvador. I was just wondering what that experience was like for you, and maybe you could say a little bit about what it was like to come home too.
Well, maybe Marcy can start because she was the one that had the most communication while we were there. So, right? So I was getting my information from Marcy and from Kayla when we were in El Salvador.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, I felt bad because our last couple days in El Salvador, we were quite distracted, messaging home back and forth, trying to figure out what was going on because we didn't have the information in El Salvador that of course everybody had back home. So messaging back and forth with family, trying to figure out how we were going to make it work, how we were going to get home from the hospital or airport, how we weren't
even sure we were going to make it to the airport. We weren't sure if Toronto was going to quarantine us. We didn't know. Yeah.
So it was, I felt kind of bad because I felt like our attentions were divided especially the last day when you're trying not to panic and you're trying to let things know that God is in control, but it's always in the back of your head. Right. So it was different.
Yeah. Especially when like your family wants to quarantine you the second you touch down and like,
I want to be home.
I want to see my family. I haven't seen you guys in 10 days. And like, we're going to isolate you in the house.
But they're so nice because when this information first started coming, they were saying, oh, it looks like we will have to go to the apartment and Dad will keep the house. And I said, well, you know what? If it's me, I'm sorry. Ed has to move in with his parents or the kids and I'm getting the house. I am not going in some hotel. I'm not that nice.
It was a very sort of strange thing. I imagine just going through it from your end that there was a lot of question marks. So I would have felt some nerves coming back. We have a couple of weeks distance where now everyone is kind of in this stay home mentality, but still, when you're coming back, you really didn't know how it was going to be coming back.
No.
I think it was difficult for Marcy and I as well because we have elderly parents that we could not visit when we came back.
Yeah.
So that creates some kind of a hardship.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
just, this was in God's plan, just as it was in God's plan for you guys to go and join with these amazing ministries going on in Nicaragua and El Salvador. What's kind of ahead for like missions in Bethel? I think as we kind of sit back and get some perspective of the world and COVID-19, I know there were some plans in the work, and I guess I'm just wondering, one, what's might be in the future, depending on what the world looks like, and two, how can we continue to support these ministries that we've been talking about?
Well, we had planned, and we've talked with the church already, next year to go to Liberia. We have quite a relationship with Bethel, Liberia, and we've given them money, and they've built a school, and they've built rooming houses and stuff like that. And we have not been there now in, I think 2015 was the last time a team went to Bethel. So our plan was to go in 2021. We were hoping to go in the spring. At this point, we're just going to kind of do a wait and see. We have no idea how the world's going to bounce back from COVID-19, what the economies are like, how people will be themselves financially. So we're still praying that we can go at some point in 2021, but we're really just adopting a wait and see thing right now. When the time does come, we will have an information night, because we know that there's a lot of people who would love to come to Bethel. So we will have an information night at the church for those who are interested, so we can have some more information for them for that. But yeah.
No, it's hard to know.
Yeah.
And is there a way we can just continue praying for these different ministries that you guys had some experience with during this trip?
Well, I know our next offering at the church is on the 24th. And I believe that one is going to go to support the Clavis program, which is the sexual abuse prevention program that they run through the schools and stuff.
Kayla, you talked about that, yeah.
Yeah. So that one is, we hope to have a video to show before that one, just so everybody can meet Josue, who runs the program and stuff like that. But yeah, the programs, they can always use our prayer. There's like Seeds of New Creation in El Salvador is, it's a newer organization, but they have amazing programs there. We've talked with the church about like the Clavis program, cohort program runs out of there. They run the Timothy program, and
SETI, they run SETI. They have food for the hungry. They have tons, hey?
Yeah. So
I was going to say, as far as support, we receive communication from Nicaragua. Carson gets an email monthly from Nicaragua for prayer requests. And so we are looking to open communication between us and them, and sending them prayer requests as well. And I'll be communicating with El Salvador, because it'll be in Spanish, and then forwarding it on to Carson as lead of Central America for World Mission. So then he'll send those prayer requests to the prayer teams that meet on Wednesday morning and on Monday evening, once a month. I'm not sure if all of those prayers would fit in the bulletin or in the announcements, but
No, but it'd be good for us to know. I mean, we want to be praying with our friends, our friends around the world. We want to be praying with.
Yeah, and vice versa. They're willing to pray for us.
That's amazing. I think for anyone that is watching this video at another time, I would just encourage, if you're watching this, to maybe at the end of this video, just take some time to pray for El Salvador and to pray for Nicaragua, for some of these things that stood out to you. Obviously, Lynn, Marcy, Kayla, and Carson have this personal experience there, but they kind of went there representing us as a church. And, I would encourage you, after you've watched this, just to take a few minutes to pray for this amazing work that's going on in Nicaragua and El Salvador. I want to thank all of you for joining us for this call. You guys were on quite the trip. I am glad you're back safe. Obviously, there's so much more today to do and so much more to pray about. But thank you, and look forward to things coming up in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for having us and giving us this chance.